Welcome to Learner's Planet, my dear children. Children, in the previous session, we discussed about the water, some introduction to water, some importance of water, right? And we also discussed about the impurities. They are of two kinds, soluble and insoluble impurities, right? So in today's session, we will continue with this lesson of removing the impurities from water by various ways, by some processes. So let us start with this session, children. Yes, removing impurities from water. Now, before going to the topic of the processes by which we can remove the impurities from water, first of all, we should know that what is actually meant by removing the impurities from water. That means removing the impurities from the water means making the water pure. That means the water purification. So what is meant by the water purification? Yes, water purification is a process of removing undesirable chemicals from the water or the biological contaminants. Contaminants means the germs which contaminate the water, which makes the water dirty, or the suspended solids which are present in the water and the gases from the contaminated water, right? So removing all such things from the contaminated water and making the water purified or making the water pure is termed as the water purification, right? Because we cannot drink water which is full of contamination, right? We cannot drink contaminated water, otherwise we may suffer from various fatal diseases. So most water is purified for human consumption, that is the drinking water, but water purification may also be designed for a variety of other purposes. Now we must be thinking that only drinking water should be in the purified form, but this is not true, children. Only water which is needed for drinking is not purified, but water purification process is very much important for other purposes also. So let us discuss about some of the processes by which we can remove the impurity from the water and we can make the water pure, and for what purposes we can use it, right? So you must be thinking that in what purposes water purification must be helpful, for what it is designed actually. Yes, for other purposes means for the requirements of the medical facilities, or in medical facilities we require purified water, even in industrial applications, even in pharmaceutical industries, yeah, right? In general, the methods used here include the physical processes, right, and some chemical processes, right? So we will study some of the physical processes and some of the chemical processes by which we can purify the water. So actually the purification process of water reduces the concentration of the particulate matter, including the suspended particles, the suspended solids and the gases, or the parasites or bacteria or algae, viruses, fungi or other type of germs, or dissolved and particulate material which is derived from the surfaces that water may have made contact with after falling as rain. Right, so all these things need to be removed from the water to make it pure, right? So now let us start with the processes. Yes, removing insoluble impurities. As we discussed that there are two types of impurities, soluble and insoluble, right? Soluble impurities are the ones that get dissolved in the water, for example salt, and insoluble impurities are the ones that do not dissolve in the water, for example sand, right? So removing insoluble impurities like such as sand, can be separated by two physical processes, and these processes are sedimentation and filtration. Right? So these are the physical processes by which we can purify the water. So let us discuss about these processes in detail. Yes, sedimentation. Student, first of all, we should know that what is meant by sedimentation. Sedimentation is a physical water treatment. It is a physical process. Water treatment process means purifying the water, right? So this is the process which is in which it is used to settle out the suspended solids in the water under the influence of gravity, right? Because you know that gravity means it is actually, yes, it is actually the law of attraction, right? It will attract all the solid particles, or what will happen? Because of the influence of gravity, under the influence of gravity, the heavy particles will settle down, and this settling down of the suspended solids in the water and getting the clear water on the upper layer other than the insoluble, other than the solid particles which have been settled down, is known as sedimentation. So this is a physical water treatment in which we do not need any type of chemical. That is why it is a physical water treatment. It happens on its own. Now you can see here in this picture, this is a water containing insoluble impurities. Can you see here? These are some of the insoluble impurities. Now after some time, we do not have to do anything. We do not have to add any chemical, we do not have to add any substance in it to purify it. We just have to keep it steady for some time. And after some time, we can see here that these are the suspended solids which have been settled down at the bottom, right? So these are the insoluble impurities, means the one which do not get dissolved in water. So it gets suspended in the water, right? And it will make a layer of impurities, and rest of the water which is in this layer, upper layer, is the clean water or the clear water, right? We cannot say that this is 100% pure, but we can get somewhat, some percentage of the clear water, right? This is not pure water, pure clear water, but this is somewhat clear water which we can obtain by this physical process which is called as sedimentation, right? So actually sedimentation occurs when water erodes the solid materials such as rocks or corals, and then the resulting particles settle on inanimate surfaces within the water, and these surfaces could include large rocks or the coral reefs or the body of the water's floor, right? After some time, this sediment can form its own surface like this. So it forms its own surface which is known as sediment, right? So it involves the following steps. Like in this method, the mixture, like we can take an example of sand, right? The mixture is allowed to stand undisturbed in the container, and after some time, the insoluble substances such as sand or a mud, if we take a muddy water, right? So the insoluble substances such as mud will settle down at the bottom of the container as sediments, and this process is called as sedimentation. Let us understand with the help of one more picture, right? This one, right? So we will keep this container, with a mixture undisturbed for some time, and we can see that after some time it sediments and the pure water is then poured onto another container. So this is the clear water which we have obtained, which is not 100% pure, right? So this is termed as supernatant and this is termed as sediment, right? So the process in which the suspended solids get settled in the container is known as sedimentation, and we obtain clear water which is called as supernatant, right? So this process is actually followed by one more process where the clean water can then be poured out into a separate container, which we saw, right? This is called decantation, because we are pouring out the supernatant or the clear water from that container in which the impurities have been settled down, and we are just pouring out into separate container. We are pouring out means we are decanting the clean water or the supernatant from that container which is in which the impurities have been settled down. We are decanting it into another container. So this process is termed as decantation, right? So sedimentation is often used as a primary stage in modern wastewater treatment plant, in which sedimentation process reduces the content of the suspended solids as well as the pollutants which are present in the suspended solids, right? So sedimentation and decantation goes hand in hand, right? Decantation is followed by sedimentation, right? In this way, the rate of sedimentation can be improved by adding special chemicals also, such as alum, right? Now can you see here, this is alum. So we are actually adding some special chemicals such as alum in this container which is full of impurities or the mixture, right? So here what happens, the rate of sedimentation can be improved by adding such chemicals, and this process is called as loading, because we are adding the special chemical in this mixture. And because of adding special chemical in this mixture, the process known as loading can be used to separate dirt particles suspended in the muddy water, so that we can obtain the clear water, right? So in this way, what will happen? A piece of alum is actually suspended in the beaker containing muddy water or sandy water, and the alum particles attach themselves to the dirt particles suspended in the muddy water, making them more heavier. So you must be thinking that how can these special chemicals such as alum can improve the rate of sedimentation? Yes, they can improve because alum particles attach themselves to the dirt particles, and they will make these dirt particles more heavier. And as you know that under the influence of gravity, what will happen? These suspended particles which are already present in the mixture, which will settle down, right? Because of this alum, they will be more heavier in weight and they will settle down more in the at the bottom of the container. And because of this, the dirt particles settle down at the bottom of the container and it will make the water more clear, right? So we can obtain more clear water with the help of this loading process, right? So loading is a process which can be used to separate dirt particles which are suspended in muddy water or the sandy water, right? Right. So I hope you are clear with the sedimentation process. Now we will study or discuss about the another physical process known as filtration. So filtration is actually the act and science of using filters, right? Like in this method, the insoluble impurities can be removed by passing the impure water through a filter paper, right? Now what happens actually, there are many different methods of filtration, but all these methods aim to attain the separation of two or more materials. Sandy water has been passed through a filter paper. This is a filter paper, right? As you know that this is the process in which is the act and science of using filters. So we are using a filter paper over here which is a cone shaped, right? And we are passing the sandy water through this cone shaped filter paper, right? And you can see that we have a glass jar here and we can obtain clean water when the sandy water is passed through a filter paper. Filter means it will filter the water, the sandy water, right? And we can obtain clean water. So the simplest method of filtration is to pass a solution of a solid and a fluid through a porous interface such that the solid is trapped, means the sand particles will get trapped here in the filter paper and the fluid will pass through it. So this principle is actually based upon the size difference between the particles which makes up the fluid and the particles which makes up the solid. Always remember that there should be a size difference between the solid particles and the fluid particles, right? The solid particles should be larger as compared to the liquid particles, right? Then and then we can obtain clean water. So how does this takes place actually? Yes, as we discussed that all the different methods of filtration aim to attain the separation of two or more materials, and this is achieved by some form of interaction between the substance or the objects to be removed and the filter. So this is the interaction between the substance which is to be removed and the filter paper which we are using. In addition to these, the substance that is to pass through the filter must be a fluid, that is, it should be a liquid or a gas. Then and then only we will be able to use this filtration process to filter the water out of any substance like sandy water which contains sand particles or the muddy water, right? So let us understand this by one more picture. Yes. This is one more picture in which we can see that this is a container which is a liquid and insoluble solid, means this is a mixture of liquid and insoluble solid. Insoluble solid means this is a solid which will not be dissolved in water, right? So we can see here that this is the impurity, this is the water with the impurity, right? And here we have placed a filter paper, right, in the filter funnel. This is a glass filtered funnel and we have placed a filter paper over here, because of which what will happen, whenever we will add the liquid and the insoluble solid, what will happen, the clean water will be collected here in the flask which we have placed here, and the rest of the solid will stuck to this filter paper and we will be able to get filtered liquid or the filtrate or the clear water, right? So this is actually what is happening. By extending this principle, it becomes possible to separate any two things with a significant size difference. For example, an experiment to prove the existence of microscopic organisms which involve the comparison of water which can be passed through some porcelain and the unfiltered water, right? When it is left in a sealed container, the water passed through the porcelain will take a longer time to get separated from the microscopic organisms, and in this way we can see that, or we can say that, very small items such as bacteria can be removed from the fluids. In fact, it is possible for other molecules to be removed from the fluids by using this method, as long as there is a size difference method. So always remember, the smaller the channels through which the liquid that or the fluid that is being filtered must pass, the greater the physical interaction between the fluid and the filter. Thus the pressure which is required to achieve a flow through the filter will rise quickly, and we can separate these substances through the process of filtration, right? So in the same way, a mixture of sand and water can also be separated using filtration process, right? So this is actually a mixture of sand and water which can be separated through this process. A circular piece of filter paper is taken and folded twice to make a cone, and this paper cone is kept inside a funnel. A flask is kept below the funnel and the mixture is poured into the flask through the funnel, and sand is retained in the filter paper and clean water is obtained in the flask. So in this way the filtration process works, right? So children, I hope that these physical processes of removing the impurities from the water is clear to you. I hope you enjoyed this session. We will continue this lesson in the next session with removing impurities from water by other processes also, right? So in this session we discussed about removing insoluble impurities, right? We will meet in the next session. Till then, keep learning, keep enjoying. Thank you, children.